Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. Yes, I still cannot get a haircut, so please pardon my appearance. I got the Kyle MacLachlan look going on. If you remember how he looked in the movie Showgirls, where he would take his hair and just comb it over and he would have it hanging down over his eye. Yeah, I know. Somebody told me that while I was at the gas station. Somebody just said to me, "Hey, you look like Kyle MacLachlan. Did anybody ever tell you that?" And I'm like, "Not really, but thanks, dude." And I paid for my gas and drove away. That was kind of odd, but anyway, it just made me think of that. Ironically, in this video, we're going to be talking about the top myths of collecting and investing in antiques and collectibles. Some of you will recall about a year ago, I did a video on this channel. It was near when this channel launched, I think, if I remember correctly. It may have been a couple of months later. My top tips for investing in antiques and collectibles. And in that video, I wanted to address certain tips that have served me well over the years, that I've learned from my mentors, that I've learned from other more sophisticated investors in the trade than even myself, that I apply to a lot of these markets that I choose to enter into with any type of serious financial commitment. Again, guys, when I talk about investment, I'm talking about the people that are getting into these markets solely because they have a passion, but also for a potential for financial growth. And let's be honest, in today's marketplace, with companies like eBay, Heritage Auctions, online auctions, companies like GP Analysis that keep track of the price of certain comic books and what they're sold for when they're graded, companies like Hakes, a lot of these top tier auction sites, a lot of these markets are geared towards financial investment, whether you realize it or not. Even looking at what's transpiring in the trade right now with companies like Mythic Markets that are allowing you to buy fractional shares of collectibles, which I personally don't agree with. But if you want to put your money into something like that, by all means, it's all on you. I did a video on that, why I don't think it's a good idea. So when we look at these markets, there are certain myths that permeate the trade, whether it be through online collecting forums, whether it be through Facebook groups, or whether it just be through casual conversations between collectors and speculators. Now, personally, I believe that one of the problems that the antiques and collectibles trade is experiencing at present time, and again, this issue that I'm going to talk about seems to fall on the collectible side of the trade. We tend to not have this problem on the antique side of the equation. So on the collectible side of the equation, there's a lot of people under the age of 30 that are coming into a lot of these pop culture-based collecting categories. Whether we're talking about, again, Pokemon, Magic, vintage video games, vintage toys, to a certain extent, vintage comic books. And they're coming into these markets, and most of these markets, some of them, not all, are encased in a massive speculative bubble. And they're taught that collectibles and antiques always go up in value. Well, that's myth number one. No, they do not. A lot of these markets are very speculative, and they're very, very risky, especially when we start talking about the difference between speculative markets versus established markets versus mature markets in the trade. For instance, if you come to me, you go, "Sean, I know that you're a consultant in the antiques and collectibles trade. I want you to consider taking me on as a client." I'm going to tell you that if you come to me and you say, "I have a passion for coins, firearms, graded currency, artwork," I'm going to say, "Okay, you're on the mature side of the equation." A lot of those markets are already mature, they're established. The people investing in those markets pretty much know what they're doing. They may need some guidance from time to time, but let's be honest, if you can navigate the rare coin marketplace by yourself, and you can put together a six-figure portfolio of investment grade rare coins that will at least hold value and or increase in value over the years, you're doing very well for yourself in the antiques and collectibles trade. Well, on the other side of that equation, I have people that come to me, "Sean, I'm a genius. I bought all these Pokemon cards and got them graded in the year 2005. Today, they're all worth a fortune. I can do no wrong. This is awesome. These markets are going to keep going up and up and up." I'm sorry to bust your bubble, but one of the things you're going to learn in the antiques and collectibles trade is at a certain point, even once these markets stabilize, because Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, vintage video games, graded video games, even certain subsets of the vintage toy marketplace, they're all very speculative right now. Once those markets stabilize, there's going to be a price ceiling that is going to be hit for some of these items. Let me give you a prime example. Back in the 1990s, before AFA came on the scene, there were a lot of people claiming that vintage Star Wars figures from the coveted original trilogy, meaning vintage Star Wars figures made by Kenner that were released in 1978, 1979, all the way up to 1984, they were going to be a massive investment potential collectible throughout the trade over the next coming decades. Now, to be fair, yes, vintage Star Wars figures from the original trilogy are coveted today. A lot of people collect them. Well, back in the 1990s, I can show you literature that says your average 12-back figure by the year 2010 and or 2015 was going to be worth $10,000. I'm sorry, that never happened. In fact, if you look at the price of vintage Star Wars figures, even AFA graded, coveted 12-backs, in most cases, from the years 2010 all the way to today, you're going to see that a lot of them dropped in value. They did not even hold value. Now, why did that happen? Well, there was a minor speculative bubble in vintage Star Wars figures when Disney announced that they bought Lucasfilm and they were putting into production the newest Star Wars films that would premiere in the year 2015. Then when 2015 came, a lot of people went to see The Force Awakens and they said, it was a good film, but it wasn't as great as the classic movies. Coupled with the fact that Disney has a tendency to whore out their properties, meaning they kept releasing new Star Wars movies, new franchises, new toys, everything that they could do to make more money. And you kind of realize that the market for Star Wars collectibles is somewhat oversaturated at present time. So it kind of makes sense that a lot of the vintage figures, yeah, they have value. Don't get me wrong. If you bought them off of store shelves for $2, $3, $4 a figure, you kept them, you got them graded, and you're selling them today, you're doing quite well. No problem there. But if you paid $1,000 or $1,200 for a 12-back figure back in 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, today, your investment hasn't grown that much. I hate to say that. Whereas if you would have took that same $1,200 and put it in an S&P 500 index fund, even with the quote-unquote corona crash and recovery, because we're already in the recovery right now, apparently, according to Wall Street, guess what? You would have had a lot more money than just that $1,200 sitting there in Star Wars figures. So be very careful when anybody ever tells you that collectibles and antiques always go up in value. Let me give you a secret now that we're 7 minutes into this video and I'm only on top myth number 1. Antiques and good collectibles, all is what they are. They are a store of value. So even once prices stabilize and these items are sought after, the best ones on average don't always go up in value. The best ones, especially if they're in a mature market, tend to work as a store of value where you can diversify assets away from financial markets, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. You can put them in these items and they're at least going to keep up with the cost of inflation and or stay the same. And in some areas of the market, when we look at Pokemon cards, Magic the Gathering cards, vintage video games, and graded video games, that's honestly better than having an asset that's going like this, up, down consistently, which is a lot of your more speculative markets tend to do. And everybody thinks just because a speculative market is up at present time, they're a genius, they're making money, and that Sean guy on reserved investments, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But then when those markets drop, or when there's a crash like what occurred in Magic the Gathering cards between, 2018 and 2019, well now, what do? I don't understand. I used a 0% credit card to buy into these items, and they just dropped 40 to 50%. See, guys, it's very easy to claim to be a genius when prices are rising. When prices are crashing, that's when everybody starts deleting their comments and leaving the channel in disgust, going, oh my God, I don't know what to do. He was right. So, words to think about. That's myth 1. Myth 2, it's easy to predict market trends in the antiques and collectibles trade. Guys, one of the reasons that I started this channel is because it's very difficult for the average speculator, the average Timmy, and the average Poindexter out there to analyze the antiques and collectibles trade from the standpoint of economics and finance. And if you are investing in these items, it's no different than Wall Street. You must have some fundamental understanding of both economics and finance. Don't let anybody tell you that it's easy to predict market trends in the antiques and collectibles trade. More on that when we get to myth 3. But before I even go there, I just want to state, again, it's very easy to look at something like Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, and video games and go, that's going to be the future of the hobby. Well, no crap, Einstein. We know that those markets are not going to die out. They're going to eventually, hopefully, become established. But what you're not understanding is when those markets go from speculative to established, they're going to change. They're going to evolve. Certain prices are going to drop exponentially. Certain prices are going to rise. Don't get me wrong. But it's going to change. It's not going to be the same market that you are seeing today. This happened with vintage comic books. If you look back, when people started to collect vintage comic books in the 60s, 70s, when it really started to gain traction, and in the 80s, horror comic books were the big thing. Sean, I want to go after, oh my gosh, Vault of Horror, Tales from the Crypt, all these EC comics. And don't get me wrong, some of them do have value today. But if you look at the growth of horror comics compared to the growth of superhero comics, what happened? High-end superhero comics and first appearances, origin issues surpassed horror comics en masse. The market changed. It transitioned. It went from speculative to established. And even today, there is a speculative bubble in vintage comic books just due to the Marvel movies, the DC Universe, and the like. So more on that in an upcoming video because I am looking to get back into investing in vintage comic books. When I do that, I'm going to do you guys a favor and I'm going to take an inside look and show you what I'm looking for when I go out into the market and attempt to invest in those comic books because I think it's going to be a good lesson for all of you guys out there. Next myth, top myth number 3. Everything that is popular will always be valuable and become collectible. I've done videos on this. Harry Rinker did some excellent articles on this. A lot of people believe fraudulently in a rule of 25. What the rule of 25 is, and it's been disproven so many times, but if you log on to the CGC comic forums, if you log on to some of these Facebook groups, there's people that continue to believe that everything that is popular today in 25 years will become collectible and valuable. That is completely false. By that logic, we would all be worshiping Beanie Babies, Cabbage Patch Kids, Power of the Force 2 vintage Star Wars figures, which came out in the 1990s. Those are practically worthless in the market today because too many are hoarded and popular. We would be collecting Rubik's Cubes and Mad Balls. None of those items that I've mentioned are extremely collectible today. And they were all some of the most popular collecting categories of the 1990s. You want more? Pez dispensers. Pez dispensers back in the 1990s went through a massive speculative bubble where people were literally paying a premium for modern era mass-produced Pez dispensers at that time. Another thing some of you guys who are as old as me remember, pogo balls, koosh balls, a lot of that stuff was very popular. People tried to collect the different colors of pogo balls, koosh balls. Today, none of that stuff is worth anything, guys. So if you fundamentally believe everything that is popular today will always be valuable and become collectible in the future, you are dead wrong. It is completely false, guys. Top myth number 4. Collectibles become desirable as time moves on. Again, this kind of ties into top myth number 3, but it is completely false. I'm going to state something to you guys, and some of this may shock you, but believe it or not, a person born in the year 2020 is not going to relate to a Nintendo, an NES game cartridge, the way that you do who grew up with that system. This is why all you guys that think great at video games are going to be it's going to be the next big thing, and all these kids being born in the year 2010, 2020, 2030, they're all going to want the origins of Nintendo, and they're going to start collecting these Nintendo Entertainment System games that are encased in plastic with a grate on them to the point where they can't even play them. I'm sorry, guys. That most likely will not happen. There will be people, diehard collectors, who are going after that stuff in 10 to 20 years still. I've said that before, but the market for vintage video games is going to change as it moves from a speculative market to an established market. And you need to understand that. This is something that all the speculators out there that love to come on this channel and go, Sean, you don't know what you're talking about. Everybody's going to want a first edition copy of The Legend of Zelda. And I have to sit there and laugh. I'm sorry. Someone born in 2010 or 2020 or 2030 isn't even going to relate to an actual video game cartridge the way somebody my age or even 30 years of age in the market today does. So be very careful with that ideology. It's dangerous. Next myth. Top myth number 5. Investing in collectibles is less risky than investing in financial markets. This is completely false. Guys, I'm going to show you now that we're 15 minutes into this video. You want to be rich over the course of your life. You want to build wealth. I'm going to tell you the easiest formula to do this. Call up Vanguard, T. Rowe Price, Fidelity, Charles Schwab. Get yourself a diversified portfolio of index funds. All you need is 3 to 4 funds to do this. Get yourself a total stock market index fund, an S&P 500 index fund, a total bond market index fund, and a total international stock index fund. And again, that advice is given for the people who live in U.S. So obviously, if you're overseas, a total stock international index fund would be catered to countries like Europe, Japan, China, and the like, emerging markets along with established markets. That being said, once you have those 4 funds, all you need to do is devote 30% to the S&P 500 index fund, 30% to the total stock market index fund, 20% to the total international stock fund, and 20% to the total bond fund. If you add that up, that adds up to 100%. Now, all you need to do every month is put money in those funds and keep that allocation at 30, 30, 20, 20. And guess what? In 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you'll have 6 figures or more in that portfolio. That's the easiest way to get rich. Instead, some of you guys are chasing what I call Ponzi dreams. Not Ponzi schemes, Ponzi dreams. You're going after all these markets. Oh my God, I got it. FOMO. I'm going to miss out if I don't buy Magic the Gathering cards. I'm going to miss out if I don't buy Pokemon. I got to get this graded vintage comic book. Not realizing you're buying all this stuff in some cases, either in a speculative bubble or at the high end of the market. You're not doing any market research on this stuff. You're just chasing dreams. You're chasing smoke, fugazi. And that's why a lot of you guys can't build wealth. If you go back and you look at some of my comments, I got comments when I started this channel. Sean, I want to get involved in the financial markets. I'm going after a company that produces gluten-free, freeze-dried dog food. I think that's going to be the next big thing. No! Don't go after individual stocks. Index the damn market. Buy the whole thing, whether it goes up or down, and keep putting money in that fund. Over the course of 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you'll build wealth. You don't even have to worry about collectibles. I guarantee you, at some point in the future, the dividends that are paid out from that fund, if you don't want to reinvest them in the fund anymore, you could take them in cash and you can start using that to buy collectibles. Okay? That's how you build wealth. You don't build wealth by attempting to build a house of cardboard or a house of digital cartridges that are stacked high to the moon because you love the Nintendo Entertainment System. That's not how real wealth is created. And guys, let me let you in another secret. If you would come to me through the consulting channel that I have, meaning you would come to me to be a consultant in the antiques and collectibles trade for you, and you would tell me, Sean, I want to build wealth in the antiques and collectibles trade, but I'm putting all my money in firearms, rare coins, historical documents. I would tell you the same thing. You diversify into those markets. Your core holdings should be financial assets, stocks, bonds, ETFs, mutual funds, and the like. It should not be in the collectibles marketplace. No different if you come to me and you tell me I want to put all my money in real estate. I'm going to tell you you're crazy. You must have a diversified portfolio. It is a must. The last and final myth that I want to cover in this video is collectible markets are more stable than stocks and other equity-based assets. I'm sorry, this is a myth, guys. I understand some of you guys who do not have exposure to stock markets, some of you guys who think that individual stocks are the way to go, which I disagree when you're first starting out creating a financial portfolio. You're going to look at the stock market, you're going to go, oh my God, it's up 500 points, it's down 1,500, it's up another 1,000, it went up 3,000. I can't follow this. It's insane. It looks like prices are all over the place. That's normal, guys. When you compare that to the collectibles market, though, make no mistake, over the long term, if you go back and you look at the collectibles market, in a lot of the categories that you guys are investing in, Pokemon, Magic, vintage video games, comic books, toys. Those markets go like this too. So you can't sit here and say collectible markets are more stable when you're investing in markets that are based on pop culture collectibles that are extremely speculative. Stocks are speculative. But if you have an education in finance, you can look at the fundamentals of the company. You can look at earnings, debt to asset ratio. You can look at liquidity. You can look at sales. And you can start to analyze why a certain stock price is what it is and make your own conclusion on it. In the antiques and collectibles trade, where market manipulation exists, it's very hard to do that, guys. I hope this video served you well. If it hasn't, if there's something you want me to expand on, let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching and have a great day.